There was a moment in this game which really grabbed my attention. Now, I have never played a Silent Hill game. Growing up, I would sit and watch my mother play on the PlayStation, watching her run around this strange, foggy town, collecting items and being attacked by weird pixel meatbags. To me, it looked pretty boring. But I bring this up because when playing the remake, I had no idea what to expect. And so when Maria said this...
James? Is everything alright? Hey, you okay? It's like you froze for a second.
It presented many questions. While it's a fun little nod to the player, it actually has larger importance to the role of saving in Silent Hill 2. So that's what we're going to look at in this video. Please enjoy! Much like the foggy town itself, James is a man shrouded in mystery. The opening shows us a person who feels unknowable. As we play, we find that James is both contradictory and a little strange.
What is this?
He looks both young, yet aged with some heavy burden. He's friendly at times, but then super violent.
Is this what I saw in the fog?
He can be both empathetic and cold. As the player, we can't help but feel disconnected from James. In many games, the player controls a character like an invisible puppeteer. But in Silent Hill, this is undermined by saving, and by James's conflicting actions and behaviours. Something I noticed in the game is how often James looks at his own reflection, in TV screens, mirrors, water, and saving. What's more, we get the impression that reflections are not always true in Silent Hill. These reflections can be viewed as doubles, which lines up very well with the doubling theme that the game uses in many places. Both the normal and the nightmare realm, and in other places, reflections can act as distorted reality. In the beginning, James touches his face as if to test if he's real. This motif is continued later by Maria, who touches James and says,
See? I'm real.
As she does so, we see the slight blurring once again, indicating that reality for James is unsteady. Reflections, it seems, cannot be trusted. It's not even that they aren't showing reality, so much as they are showing only one side of things. Much like the nightmare world James visits, which is simply a twisted version of the real Silent Hill, as if it wasn't twisted enough, these distorted realities remind us that we don't really know James, just as he doesn't know himself. Even when we hear his thoughts, they can't be trusted. We are always looking at him from the outside, just as James looks at his world through a distorted lens. As one definition puts it, reality is the world as it objectively exists, while identity is how individuals perceive and present themselves to others, shaping their actions and interactions. Reality is the external world, and identity is the internal and external construct. And this is where saving comes in. The first save we come across is floating inside a well, which is almost too on the nose. Where there would normally be a water reflection, the save reflects James instead. Saving in games normally represents a reprieve, a moment of relief from danger while we save our progress. But Silent Hill saves are a bit more discomforting. Each save is a small glowing red square, which gives off an unsettling hum. As we click to interact, the screen turns blood red, and we find ourselves being looked down upon by James.
It's like someone's groping around my skull.
What James says here reveals more about the nature of saving. We literally go into his head when we save, hence the unsettling hum and red screen, which represents a disturbed mind. The constant hum made me think about being underwater. Saving for James is like touching his subconscious. That's why he says,
It's like someone's groping around my skull.
We can also relate the square saves to photographs. Something James finds throughout the game are these little Polaroids which seem to relate to some missing memories. And so saving also shows that these red squares are to do with missing information. as James must dig around his own mind to remember things, a painful process, hence his complaints and the red screen. Some have suggested that James is looking at the player when he saves, and while I think that is intentional, I don't think it's the main reason. The main reason is that James is looking at himself. The player has taken on the role of the innocent, confused James, but this is just one side to him. When James looks at us during saving, it's because he's reflecting on himself. This version of James has been separated from the truth which some part of him remembers. This is the version of James he doesn't want to be real. I think this is why the game keeps us at a distance from him. Much like James is trying to remember his past, the player only knows what he currently knows, whether he's searching for answers or anything else. James doesn't recognise himself in the opening, but each save brings him closer to the truth. And as realizations and memories return, he starts to dislike what he discovers alongside the player. This is why his personality and behaviours are so conflicting, and makes us feel disconnected to him. James's identity is confused and at war with itself, and it's this internal struggle that fuels his story. So this all brings me to Maria. As I've discussed, this isn't just a fourth wall breaking Easter egg. Maria's comments show that she is wary about James coming closer to the truth. We know by the end of the game that she's a monster made by Silent Hill, but spun from James's own mind. She's like a twisted version of Mary, or perhaps what James wanted Mary to be. And Maria does not want James to leave. She wants him to stay in this fantasy world where she is exactly what he needs. Maria's comment is a subtle nod to her own discomfort about James leaving. When she says James appears frozen, it implies that he is briefly out of this reality. Since saving is a time of self-reflection, it takes James out of the confusing reality he finds himself when trapped within Silent Hill. So it makes sense that Maria would be uncomfortable with this. Saving isn't just for progress, but also to allow James to become more in tune with himself. Later, Maria mocks his patchy memory, a monster toying with her prey.
Are you confusing me with someone else? You were always so forgetful. Remember that time in the hotel?
And what could be more threatening to her than James saving and coming to terms with his past? When Maria taunts James about his mental state, she knows his reality is shaky and it's being tested. When she says I'm real, it's an attempt to override James's reality, to make her existence his new truth. And this is because, really, everything comes back to James and his need to understand himself, his search for his identity. So often, James expresses disappointment in what he finds, or fails to find, throughout the game. The truth is within him, but he spends all of his time searching in the wrong places. All this time spent looking for Mary has really been about finding himself, because James knows deep down that Mary is gone, but why she is gone is something he doesn't want to confront, and that's why it's crucial to his own identity. As I've said before, Silent Hill questions reflections. For James, there are two versions of the world, the normal and the nightmare, Mary and Maria, the James we play and the one looking back at him in the mirror, eyes shadowed and mysterious. Something may seem real, but it is not, and so James must continue to question what he sees because his own mind can't be trusted. Near the game's end, we come across 9 saved squares, and it's at this point when we click on them that James averts his eyes. I think these squares represent the ultimate truth. The square shapes of saves are equal-sided and unchanging, which adds to the sense that they represent some kind of truth that cannot be ignored, and hence why James struggles to look at them. Saving hurts James most when he first enters Silent Hill. At this stage, he is the furthest away from the truth, and because saving represents truth, this is when he starts to doubt his own lies and false beliefs about his wife and her whereabouts. And the truth hurts. But James has to face it anyway. As he gets closer to that ultimate horrific truth, his reactions to saving change. He self-reflects more and begins to take responsibility for what he has done, which is why Pyramid Head hunts James down. It's only when James is ready to take responsibility that he can face this monster, who, interestingly enough, splits into two. 2 monsters and 2 realities. two sides to James that must both reconnect in order to move forward.
I know why I needed you. But it's all over now. I don't need you anymore.
And so by the end, only after he faces his inner demons, James is able to move forward, having accepted who he is and what he has done. Thanks for watching.